Thank you for joining this the webinar, the first webinar on Living Lab A90 in Rome. So just a very few information. The main aim of the webinar once again is to show the results of the Rome Living Lab, which took place last week. Before we do that, I would just like to inform you all that please, of course, you've already done that actually, but please mute your microphones. And if you have any questions, you are please kindly asked to use the chat function, which is just at the bottom of the GoToMeeting session. So with that, just a few words about the project itself. AM4INFRA aims to overcome the legacy of European transport networks. These networks have typically been developed incrementally over time under various policies and service levels, and so the building on ongoing actions, best practices, and contemporary experiences of 5 national infrastructure agencies, which are in a way considered as front runners in the development and application of asset management in their networks governance. The project itself aims to deliver the first ever common European asset management framework and approach that will enable the consistent and coherent cross-asset, cross-modal, and cross-border decision making. So, well, as part of the work of the project, we have identified 3 living labs, one in Italy, the Rome A90, and in Eindhoven, as well as in London. So one of the things we'll be doing today is actually to give feedback about the first living lab that took place once again last week. So the agenda for today, as you can see, will be concentrating more on the presentation of what took place in Rome. First and foremost, a brief introduction of the business blueprint of an asset management core system, which in a way is the core document that was used for this living lab in Rome. Then we'll have a short presentation as well of the A90 Rome context, and of course the outcome of the living lab as well. Well, okay, I mentioned this earlier. Please mute your microphone and kindly use the chat function for questions and comments. So with that, I will give the floor to Francesco rather, and to give the presentation about the business blueprint of an asset management core system, as well as the outcome of the living lab. Francesco, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Here is Fabio Pasquale. Just a couple of words before giving the floor to Francesco. Elisabetta Marcovaldi, who is the project manager for ANAS, unfortunately is not well. She's at home, she's ill, and Francesco will describe the approach which has been proposed by ANAS. And then me, Fabio Pasquale, will describe the Rome Living Lab. So, Francesco, it's up to you.
Good morning to everybody. First of all, I would like to give you a first overview of Work Package 3, Information and Data Management. The approach taken in the Work Package 3 consists mainly in 3 tasks. The first task was in the design of an asset data dictionary that consists in create a common vocabulary of asset data and related information linked to the asset in terms of data sets, data groups, and so on. With the second task, we delivered in October the business blueprint, that aims at identifying an IT solution for sharing assets across the network infrastructure agency and to publish information to our key stakeholders. Currently, we are performing the third task, that is the application of what we delivered in the previous task on a selected 10T itinerary that we identify in the Rome Ring Road. The final report of the last task will be delivered in the end of the summer. Now I'll move to the next slide to start describing in more details the contents of the business blueprint.
Hello.
The business blueprint describes an IT solution that we designed to support the development of a common approach for asset information management. The idea is that the system should collect all the asset data sources of each network infrastructure agency in one single repository, elaborate this data according to an information model that derives from the asset data dictionary that we designed in the project, elaborate this information and create KPIs or calculate KPIs or reports to be disseminated to key stakeholders. In this way, each NIAS can deliver this information in the same with the same model and allows to have a common data lake where the information can be disseminated. So in our idea, this kind of system can standardize the dissemination of asset information towards stakeholders. The inputs are each NIAS has specific data sources that are the system database, like maintenance database, asset inventory database, financial system. The system, the asset information management core system collects this data and produce the outputs that are, as I said before, KPIs or reports that can be disseminated to stakeholders. So if we can go to the next slide. There is a list of the main functionalities that are described in the business blueprint. As I said, the system should extract asset data. They aggregate and transform them according to a standard data model. But also the system should assure data reliability, integrity, and universality. We also designed a system that can manage workflow process to verify and approve the data before going out to the stakeholder. And we think also that the system should keep stored in a repository all past and approved and published data. And we designed the system also considering that should be present a front-end application for the user, for system users, that can browse the data, the asset data, and as we can see in the next slide, can review, approve, and then publish the data. As we see in slide number 6, we designed the system with a workflow, with a 3-level workflow. We designed the system considering 3 possible roles. We see the reviewer, the approver, and the publisher. The reviewer is the person that acts on the system that can check the asset data loaded in the repository, and then can so see the asset data and provide a review of them. Then the next step should be, before going to publish, there is the approver that we see in the approver as the asset manager that can access to all the data stored in the system and also to the KPIs that the system has calculated. After each check, the information can be published, go to the publisher that has the final authority to publish the KPIs to the stakeholder. Going to the next slide, we go more in a technical design, aspect of the business blueprint, as the scheme on the slide represent the system architecture. we designed the system considering some components as must-have and some other that are optional, so that are nice to have. The three core components that we consider as must-have are, of course, the central repository. That is the core of the system, because the central repository should store all the data that are collected from NIAS data sources. Then we have the ATL component, that means extract, transform, and load. That is the routine that is able to collect the data from source systems. And of course, the next must-have component is the publishing component that allows to disseminate the information that the system has calculated. Moreover, we have nice-to-have components that are like the web application for the users. We imagine that the system should have a front-end application that allows to browse the data, check the data, verify the data on a simple application for that is the action of the users on the data. So if we can go to the next slide, we can conclude the presentation of the business blueprint, saying that with the design of this system, we think that we can achieve some important goals, like an improved control of asset data thanks to integration of different data sources. We can achieve a managed process for publishing information, because the information are first controlled and then disseminated to the stakeholders. And then also we have a common approach of information contents, because the data are elaborated with the same information model that allows comparing between different NIAS, and we can have comparison between a set of KPIs shared among NIAS. And for me, it's all. There is any question or?
Thank you, Francisco. And I suggest that we ask the questions later towards the end of the webinar.
Okay. So I give the speech to Fabio.
Yes, please.
That can continue the presentation.
Yes, maybe can you hear me all?
Yes. Oh, yeah, you're there. Okay.
Yes, sorry, I have to apologize, but my train had more than 1 hour delay, so I was not able to start at the beginning. But I see you're starting everybody, so maybe you can continue. But now you know at the time here, and maybe you can tell me a little bit what happened before and what you expect from me.
Yes. Well, basically, I mean, well, since you are the moderator, the floor is yours to take it forward. We are now. The next presentation is about the A90 Rome context by Fabio, and then after that we'll have the outcome of the Living Lab.
Okay, that's good. I will listen.
Okay.
Yes.
Fabio, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Again, I'm Fabio Pasquali. I'm responsible for ANAS of Work Package 1 and Work Package 2, whereas Francesco has been describing the ANAS approach in the framework of Work Package 3. So let's start from slide number 10. What is the Living Lab in few words? The Living Lab is the tool through which we apply to specific concrete situation what has been designed and proposed in the framework of the project. Since ANAS is responsible for Package 3, the Living Lab related to Rome is aimed at checking and opening a debate among a certain number of shareholders related to the applications proposed by ANAS itself. Again, we know that it's not a case study, it's not a seminar, it's just a living lab in the sense that a certain number of stakeholders participate to this event and provide their expertise and discuss the issues, and at the end a common approach is developed and some regional and ideas are forward based on innovation. And in addition to that, the living labs in the framework of AM4INFRA are used to get to a proof of concept of the approach which has been proposed by each of major contributors to the project. Next slide, please. And the living lab organized by ANAS was based on the study of the A90 infrastructure. The A90 is the Rome Ring Road. It's a motorway, 3-lane per direction, which is 68 kilometers long and has between 100 and with peaks of 120 or 140 tons of vehicles per day. And as you see, is just the ring road and some 30 junctions with a function of radial connections allow the travelers to get into the city from the different parts of the region. Let us say that there are 4 major connections. One is from north, one is from east, one is from south, and one is from west, and the western side is related to the airport connection. So this infrastructure plays a key role both with respect to the penetration into the city and to the travel for people who just are moving from north to south and so on without getting into the city, without going to downtown. Next slide, please. And we decided to use this infrastructure because it was possible to invite a certain number of major stakeholders. The stakeholders are the companies or administration or entities responsible, like ANAS, for the operation of road infrastructures which are linked to the ring road. As I said, ANAS operates the ring road and 3 of the radial connections. And then we invited 2 toll concession companies responsible for the penetration from north and from south, and the other one responsible for the penetration from east. And then we invited the regional road agency responsible for the, let us say, mid-level roads, not national roads, no local roads, but mid-level roads, and then the municipality of Rome, and then some other minor stakeholders. And we had 2 goals in connection with this living lab, and the laboratory was actually divided into 2 sections. Well, the first section is strictly related to the work package 3. So the aim was to demonstrate and validate the applicability and practicability of the asset data management approach. That is what Francesco has described, that has been also proposed to the stakeholders, and we asked them, and then we get to the 4 questions that you read on the screen, to ask them to which extent the proposed approach was consistent with their experience or their idea about an asset management comprehensive system. So first of all, we asked them which were their indicators, KPIs, and indicators included in their asset dictionary and data and asset system. And then we asked them if the ontology map, that is the overall architecture of the system described by Francesco, is acceptable from their point of view. And then we have been trying to identify some possible deficiency in our approach, as well as in the procedures that we described earlier. Let us remember, in few words, I'm not an expert of IT, but in few words, the approach of ANAS is based on the identification of a data dictionary common to any asset manager. And I mean also rail managers, for instance, or port managers. And then after having identified these components of the system, we have been trying to describe how to extract from those data the relevant data in order to create some key indicators. And at the end of this process, we described how any organization can pass through the same exercise. So in principle, any invitees was able to check to which extent this approach was consistent with their existing structure. In either case, first case is that this organization or company has already in place a comprehensive asset management system, and the second case, which was the more frequent, which is the most frequent, at least in our experience in Italy and in the Living Lab, in the case when the organization is trying, is implementing, is moving, and is working on this approach, but at the end only as limited and separated asset management subsystems, such as, for instance, the payment management system or the bridge management system, or some systems based on the use of devices and tools for traffic assistance and emergency and operation. So this was the first part of the Living Lab. Next slide, please. Scope and expected results number 2. The second group of questions is more related to the situation of the A90, in the sense that if in the first case we asked to provide some feedback not based on specific applications, but just analyze the system per se and the way the asset management approach was acceptable by the stakeholders. In this case, our stakeholders were not IT people, but operation and maintenance people. And the first group of issues to be analyzed was we are 5 or 6 road and motorway operators belonging to different shareholders and acting with different contexts. Some of us play its role, our role, through a concessions. For some others, it's just public administration and so on. But no matter which is the framework in terms of contract and roads, but we are road operators. So which are our key indicators in terms of the key activities of a road operator? That is, do we have access one to each other to our data system in terms, for instance, of traffic and traffic information and congestion alarm, and in case of accident, how to intervene and so on. That is, do we have a common protocol for that? Because if we don't, we have to work a little bit more. But if we have, we can compare our systems, we can compare the way we extract data from the systems, and we can compare to which extent the asset management system is comparable and ready to get to a common understanding and the direct dialogue. Because we have not to forget that the one of the aims of the AM4INFRA project is to allow the Commission or any super organized entity to invite to the same table a number of operators and ask them to describe which is their approach in terms of service as well as in terms of use of financial resources for investments, so as to have a common way to compare their service and their activity with respect to the collectivity. So getting again to the same slide, which is the information mapping for the A90 motorway area, which are the data that are currently exchanged. And in order to use a concrete case, we agreed on a theoretical corridor. That is a road section which included sections of different operators. Part of the A90 ring road, part of one of the motorways which bring traffic into the city, part of the regional roads, and part of the municipal roads. So let us imagine that a user has to travel from A to B, and in this travel, he or she is going to use 4 different sections of road and motorway infrastructure operated by different people. This is what we simulated. First of all, are we going to provide a covering in terms of service and information which is homogeneous for the 4 players? The answer was no. Second question, do we have a common KPI, or can we work in order to agree on a basic KPI? For instance, is the motorway usable or not? Is there an accident and congestion and so on? And in this case, we could get to an agreement in the sense that there exists a KPI which is common to all these operators. And then, after having identified these common and aspects, we worked on an improvement scenario. That is, in order to supply a better service to the user, and having understood that the service is based on an asset management system for each of our 4 or 6 or 5 stakeholders, what can we do to improve the connections between them, and what can each of these operator do in order to improve its specific own system. Next slide, please. Let's spend some words about the outcomes. And as I told you, the living lab was divided in 2 aspects, and the first one was done during the morning. We presented the work package, and that is, we supplied an explanation a little bit wider with respect to the one that Francesco gave you all a few minutes ago. And then we also presented our specific tools that ANAS has developed during the last years, and we described which is the relationship between these tools that are used by ANAS employees and the data structure which is behind these applications. Being more precise, we have 4 or 5 different applications for the operation services. Each of them obviously is based on a database and on certain procedures, and we describe, let us say, from an internal point of view, which is the data flow from each of these databases, which are the related methodologies, and which are the applications, and to which extent they interact between each other. So we could be able to show which is the architecture behind each of these subsystems. So in this way, we provided a common understanding both to IT people and to operation and maintenance people, because again, the people who participated to the Living Lab belonged to these 2 core areas of activity, which are common to any road or motorway operators. Then we had the round table. The first round table was devoted at understanding if the approach proposed by ANAS as far as the work package 3 is concerned was correct, and we got some feedback, and we had 2 interesting specific proposed integrations, and we are going to make the best use of them. Then in the afternoon, we moved from IT system to use of IT-based applications related to operating and maintaining, or just more precisely, operating and servicing the motorway. And we described we shared the way to operate the ring road, and we compared, and after this comparison, we found out, which was up to a certain extent obvious, some areas of common understanding and already existing links also in terms of databases and procedures, and some other areas where this common understanding and even common data exchanging has not been developed so far. And at the end, we collected also in this case some interesting suggestions on the way to go on. And we decided at the end of the Living Lab to meet again with the same shareholders as well as some others if necessary, to have a second meeting on the 11th of April. And by that time, each of the attendee of the to Living Lab will work on these two areas. So the first homework will be which are our specific critics or observations or suggestions in relation to the IT approach. And the second was how are we going to integrate our systems, not with very ambitious goals, because it's not realistic, because different companies, different contractual arrangements, and different organizations. But in terms to get to a couple of minimum asset management based KPIs and procedures related to the providing of information and protocol of intervention in case of a common problem, typically a relevant accident on one of the sections with consequences on all the other related road and motorway networks as well. This is what we discussed, and 15 people attended to that, and it was from 10 to 4 more or less, and was fruitful because we decided from the beginning that was a peer exchange of information. None of us decided to hide, in the sense that we were able also to share our understanding of problems and critical assets and so on. So at the end, in our opinion, the tool of the Living Lab is a very good one, provided that it takes enough time to create a common level of understanding of the problem that we are going to discuss. I have no other points, but I'm ready to answer any question from your side. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Fabio. Are there some questions of the people? You can put it on the
Who are you, sorry?
chat function. Yes, this is Jenne. Jenne van der Velde from the Netherlands.
Okay, please go on.
You were asking questions. Yes. Well, but what I noticed in your presentation, that you're very you liked the way to work with it, but you also get some next steps identified, and what do you expect from those next steps? Can you tell something about that?
We expect two things. The first one is included in the scope of work of this project. That is to get a full feedback from the stakeholders that we invited in order to have a proof or concept of the approach related to IT concepts and components in an asset management plus life cycle cost system. We already had some preliminary information, but some of the stakeholders were not ready, either because the IT key person was not available, or because they asked for some time to read and to understand and to internally discuss the approach. So this is the first result we expect. The second one is not a part of is not within the scope of work, in the sense that the contract says that we have to launch the Living Lab and get the feedback, but it's not written that we have to get to a final agreement on a couple of KPIs or a common understanding of the asset management systems. We have to supply a tool which enables any infrastructure operator to set a dialogue with other similar companies. So if in principle, if theoretically 3 companies decide to discuss on the basis of asset management system, we should be able to give them the way to set this dialogue, because our procedure actually works. Procedure says that you start from databases and from applications, and then you create a common repository by extracting the core indicators, and then somebody controls them and another person publishes them. So this is what we are going to make object of the proof of concept. So result 1 has already been 50% achieved. Result 2 depends on the way we will be able to find an agreement on the during the second meeting on the Living Lab. But it's out of the scope of contract.
Okay. Are there other questions from the group? Because I think we have 9 or 10 people attending the meeting. I also get a message that Ruud was also attending the meeting in a few minutes. He was trying to. Maybe people can put the questions in the chat function and send it to everyone. Then I also have another question, Fabio. When I listened to your presentation, I noticed that you learned a lot from this project until now. But do you also saw that other organizations were learning from our approach and how to deal with it?
Well, indeed, it's true. We have, I mean, the AM4INFRA partners have a wider vision, in the sense that since we have been working together for the last 1 or 2 years, we are ready to discuss different issues from a common point of view. Whereas the companies that we invited have a typical normal vertical approach, in the sense they know their company, they know their applications, but still, at least in our case, in the case of our Living Lab, there is the different approaches within the same company usually don't get to a common understanding. Being more precise, there is not a real asset management approach. There is the payment management system operator, there is the responsible for overall operations, and the PMS provides information for the people for the administration and the budgeting and the presentation of the requests for financing to the shareholders in the case of toll concessions, or to the administration in the case of bodies of the public administration. But what we had to learn from them is how they manage the specific service. At the end, the Commission will use our tools to apply them to specific cases. Cases like the Rome Ring Road or Eindhoven context and so on. So from this point of view, it's important that since we are able to have a general approach, it's good to learn from companies who have a more limited approach, in the sense that we have to integrate both way to see a problem.
Okay.
This is Darko speaking. May I have a question for you, Fabio?
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Okay, I thought that you don't hear me. Going back to the previous question that Jana had and your answer, I didn't quite get it. the tool that you were mentioning, is it was it meant like the stakeholders or shareholders that are involved here in your Living Lab would have access to your databases through, for example, some front-end application, and that they would be able to make their own queries on different data that is included in your databases, or were you referring to a more soft version, that the one that you have agreed on specific KPIs to be reported by all?
Well, we allowed the people we invited to use our systems, and we explained the way these systems work, in the sense that where do they get data from and how these data are, let us say, put together in order to provide the final service, which is the application. And we, as a part of our contract, and we also brought this information in the seminar, in the Living Lab, we applied to our own systems the methodology that Francesco has described. That is, which is the relationship with the different databases, and what do we extract from those databases in order to get to a common minimal asset management indicator, and we supplied a proof of that, which does not mean that any organization is able to do that, because it's a part of the methodology that is described in our reports. I try to be more clear. If you read the reports and you agree on them, you're able to give inputs to your IT people in order to make a certain number of elaborations which are guided by a clear goal. That is, take this group of data from this database, take this other group, put them together and extract them, and then get to the elaboration of a KPI. As far as the second part of the question is concerned, we discussed them, but it was not a discussion made by IT people, but by operation people. We discussed one or two possible commonly understood KPIs related to the service. And the next step is the following one. After having agreed that KPI is acceptable by all stakeholders, are you ready to calculate this KPI using your own system? Is the way you calculate this KPI the same as we have? So there is a feedback analysis which gets more into, again, the IT approach. I hope that was clear. Shall I be more clear, or was it understandable?
Oh, it's okay. Thank you.
Okay. Are there other people with questions? No, then I think
it's Warren here, Warren Bradley from the UK. Okay, yeah. I've just got a question. I thought the point made about checking the data to make sure the integrity of the data is good. Was there any discussion on the ways of collecting the data to make sure errors are minimized? And also, secondly, with the development of machine learning and artificial intelligence to automate that first checking and review of data, so that it minimizes the time that the asset managers have to review that data?
Thank you for this interesting question. As to the first question, we did not get into detail of how data are collected by each operator. We have our protocol and our system, of course, and some of them are also checked by the government or the entity which grants the concession. We know, for instance, ANAS Altao is a state-owned road builder and operator, acts on the basis of a concession granted by the Ministry of Infrastructure. So as a part of our activity, we are controlled on the quality of data, but we did not discuss that because it was out of the scope. There was no time for that. As to your second question, this is very interesting, but AM4INFRA is a little bit behind in the sense that its scope, its goal is to write and describe and propose an overall approach. What you are talking about is a development of this activity, in the sense that if I well understood, if you collect data and you apply some devices and also work on other areas such as, for instance, an Internet of Things and big data, you're able to provide some information, we can say, on an automatic or semi-automatic level. We have internally discussed it among partners, but we did not bring this issue to the Living Laboratory. Once again, you have 3, 4 hours, 5 hours, and you invite people who, if you're lucky, have read your reports in advance. In most cases, this is not even the case, and we had to be very realistic and efficient in managing the Living Lab.
Thank you. Thank you.
If you have any question also related to the first part of the presentation, that is Francesco's description of our approach, we are happy to answer.
Okay. Well, I don't think there are more questions. And I want to thank you, Fabio, for your presentation. Are there some questions you want to ask, especially to the group? Now you had the presentations and you got these questions from us. What kind of questions did you expect from us? Maybe it's good to.
Well, I would like to ask you, first of all, if everything was clear and well described, and I invite all attendees to get to the free access to the documents. But I hope that we were able to maximize time, and were even more important that our answers were complete, comprehensive, and consistent with the questions.
Okay, well, I think that should be because I don't see any questions from people working. So then I want to thank you for the presentation and also giving some insights in your traffic through the Living Lab and how it works. When I go to the program, maybe someone can put the program back on the screen for everyone. Then we are coming to the slide 2. I think that's. Then we have the final element, and that's the conclusions and next steps. And I don't see Ruud, but I can fill it in for him. I think that we have this was our first webinar, and it's also something new for us. So, well, if you have some suggestions, we are welcome to get it. But the next steps will be that we are going to have some more of this Living Lab sessions. The next one will be in Eindhoven, and the last one will be in March in Rome. And after those sessions, we also have a kind of Living Lab webinars, so everyone can join the sessions. And at the end, we will present the results at the webinar or the TRA, and then everyone can see what the results are. And then we hope we have a kind of community for the next phases. I don't know if there are questions about that. If there are other questions of this procedure, of what the next steps will be.
I think that everything was clear, and some weeks from now we will have the webinar related to the London Living Lab, and I'm sure that some other questions or some other contributions from our people who are following our project will appear, and we'll make the best of these suggestions.
Yes. Well, of course, and I want to end the session after thanking everyone for using this medium. It's quite new for me, at least. And I hope to see you another time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes.